Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. There are major new allegations from the RCMP that agents of the Indian government have played a role in intimidation, extortion, and even murders in Canada. What will these allegations mean for the tense relations between the two countries and for Canadians with business and personal connections with India? We'd like to hear from you. After 12:30, we turn to the BC election, and the leader of the BC Green Party, Sonia Furstenau, will take your questions. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. The head of the RCMP has made some serious public allegations against the government of India, and it's urging members of the Sikh community to speak out. Yesterday, RCMP Commissioner Mike Duem alleged Indian diplomats and consular officials in Canada have been linked to acts of extortion, intimidation, and coercion, as well as murders in Canada. Duem told reporters that the National Force felt it had to come forward to disrupt the networks working in Canada, which he said pose a significant threat to public safety in our country. Here's Duem speaking today with Radio-Canada.
Normally or historically, the RCMP would have an investigation, and then when came time to arrest the individuals, charges are laid, then we disclose, and then we have a press conference. This one here, we had to balance between public safety and ongoing investigation. And because we had certain objectives that we wanted to attain with the Indian officials that were not attained, we thought it was best for us to come out because, again, balancing investigation and public safety will take precedence before the investigation.
Now, relations between Canada and India have been increasingly tense since Prime Minister Justin Trudeau alleged in the House of Commons that Canada was pursuing credible allegations of a link to India in the death of BC Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. 4 Indian nationals are accused of first-degree murder and conspiracy in connection to that case, which is now working its way through the courts. We're taking your calls on this. What impact do you think this will have on those Canada-India relations? And if you have business or personal connections with India, what impact is this having on you? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Gurpreet Singh is a journalist and host with Spice Radio, which broadcasts out of the Lower Mainland, and he spoke today with CBC's Andrew Nichol.
Honestly, I wasn't surprised. We saw this coming, and we expected this to happen. Rather, it took a little while to wait for this thing to unfold, because the community has been saying this since the day one when Hardeep Singh Nijjar was assassinated. So what RCMP officers are saying actually has validated what Hardeep Singh Nijjar has been saying while he was alive. So there is no element of surprise for me. But what we expect now is some more action on the ground in terms of some arrests. And let's see which way the trial goes. So those are some questions that need to be answered.
That's Gurpreet Singh, host with Spice Radio. Now, joining me now to take your calls, and we are asking you, what impact do you think this will have on those Canada-India relations that have been increasingly strained? And if you have personal or business connections with India, we'd like to hear what effect this is having on you. Our numbers, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. My guest is Rita Tremblay, joining me from Victoria. She's a professor emerita of political science at University of Victoria. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Michelle.
Thanks for being back on the show. What is your reaction to this announcement from the RCMP, first of all?
Well, it was kind of a bombshell yesterday. It was really a very shocking news, and to hear all the details about the investigation and various charges, and plus the withdrawal or expulsion, whoever you believe, the Indian government or you believe the Canadian government, withdrawal and expulsion of the diplomats, and then of course later on a detailed press conference by Prime Minister Trudeau,
Yes.
Which gave further more details. So it's been a kind of a I would say it's the hardest news I heard since September 18th. And because now the relationship, as you mentioned earlier, are at the between India and Canada at the lowest ebb. And I call it kind of the darkest period I've seen in I would say in last 76 years of relationship between India and Canada, particularly last 40 years. And so this is not good news for either of the countries. So it's just not, and also I think what has been very challenging to hear is two different sets of narratives. One narrative coming out of Canada and one narrative coming out of India, and they just don't seem to jive. They are completely different narratives.
Completely different narratives. To hear, our reporter who's based in India has been explaining the coverage that media has been giving there as well. What do you make of that? You said, depending on who you listen to, the expulsion of diplomats, same as in India as well, the sort of tit for tat relationship. So for people who live here, what impact could this have then, these strained relations? What's the palpable impact people may see?
I think if you are the strongest relationship between India and Canada are people to people relationship, and that has going to see the severest impact. As you're just put on the recording of one of the diasporic reporter, basically said that the pro-Khalistani people feel that they have been vindicated. Their claims that Indian government was involved is justified. So I think that's going to be the first impact, and that leads to, as the Prime Minister Trudeau said yesterday, and as the RCMP also talked about, that it's about the safety of our people, so public safety. So I think that's from Canadian viewpoint. I think that's the deepest impact. The second one is which I would say as I said, the relationship are at the lowest web. What has now gone completely missing is the trust between the two countries. So the trust factor has declined. Neither country is trusting the other one. As I said, the two different sets of narratives. And so how do you, even if, for example, after this massive withdrawal and expulsion, we haven't seen this kind of thing happening between India and even other countries, even, with regard to Pakistan, India has withdrawn its ambassador or high commissioner maybe twice or three times. China has been the other one. This is I would say the first example with regard to a Western country and a democratic country this has happened. So the trust factor is missing. And in order to rejig the relationship, that will have to be recultivated. The third impact has to do with the economic relations. So we all know since September 18th, our government-to-government relationship have been really poor. We call them chilly or frozen. Now, but even at that time, what was really positive was that our economic relationship had stayed intact. So our trade was still ongoing. Actually, it increased in 2023. We have pension funds, our Canadian pension funds invested in India. They were doing very well. So there was no impact. We've had also some of the subnational government visits, for example, from Toronto or from Saskatchewan. The Saskatchewan's premier was in India. Similarly, Stephen Harper was in India. So they, the Ontario and Saskatchewan have been working very hard to, ensure that their trade relationships remain intact. And so I think the impact we are going to see is that this economic relationship might now fracture. So that's the second one. And the third one, or whatever the third
You've
one
got the three, yes.
I got lost count of my
Let me just jump in here. My apologies, Professor. I'm going to take a call here as we ask people, what are your concerns, or what impact do you think this will have on those relationships between Canada and India? We are hearing from Rita Tremblay, Professor Emerita of Political Science at UVic. Our numbers again, 1-800-825-4900. 5950 604 669 3733. And let's go to Surrey now. And Carrie Ann is on the line. Hi, Carrie Ann. Hi, Carrie Ann. Can you hear me? Carrie Ann, I think I can hear your radio. If you can hear me, if you could please turn down your radio. Hi, Carrie Ann. Okay. We unfortunately don't have our connection with Carrie Ann calling us from Surrey, but I think she wanted to make the point that we need to worry less about trade relations and more about safety in Canada. So, that echoes what we heard earlier from the commissioner of the RCMP saying they had to make this announcement publicly because they felt that that's what was needed in terms of public safety. Do you think then this conversation, Professor Tremblay, is it misplaced to be talking about the impact on trade, the economic impact, those personal relations when you are talking about these, very serious allegations of extortion and even murders?
I don't think, I think your caller is right. I think we need to take care of our citizens, and their citizens' safety is very, very significant and important. And not only that, is the territorial integrity of our country is important. That a foreign government can come and do something like that is really, really significant. But, we cannot underestimate or undermine the economic relationship, because that's how countries survive, that's how countries thrive. Our economy is dependent on globalization and trade. So you can't undermine that aspect, because that has also an impact upon how we live, what our what our interest rates are going to be, how our productivity is going to be. So economic relations is important, but also connected to that one is also going to be we have been using our immigration has been very, very significant from India. So they've been contributing a lot to our economy. So, the economic aspects are as important, but yes, I would not put one over the economic over the other one. Indeed, public safety should be our topmost priority.
And when it comes to that, the immigration levels, when it comes to international students and temporary foreign workers, we've seen the change from the federal government on that. Let me ask you, this all happens against the backdrop of foreign interference hearings. And you talk about the importance of maintaining and preserving the jurisdiction of a democratic country. So, what are your concerns about that overall?
Well, the problem right now is that what India is saying is really problematic for us. So India is, for example, saying, if you have been following the reports of last day or so, particularly what came out also with Washington Post today, saying that, there has been kind of a very high-level involvement of the Indian government. Washington Post actually put a accusing finger at the Home Minister. But India is saying that yes, in Singapore over the weekend, when our RCMP and our senior level ministers or officers briefed National Security Advisor of India with regard to all these allegations, or what we call, what Canada is saying, irrefutable evidence, the Indian government immediately came up and said that yes, the information might have been collected or was collected in the by the diplomatic circle, but no one was involved in any violent activity, and there is no connection between the diplomatic officers, including the High Commissioner, and the gang members. And so India is basically denying that, saying we have not been given any evidence, and has been maintaining that position since September 18th. And so we have to deal with that fact, whereas they have been cooperating very solidly with the United States. Our legal systems are different. Under the indictment in the United States, all the facts have come out. And I can tell you that today there is a big commission coming from India in the United States to deal with the issues. And they've also kind of arrested a particular person in the Indian intelligence services with regard to those allegations. But that's not happening with regard to Canada. And so it's really India challenging, saying that Canada has not provided evidence. And the second thing which they are talking about, and if you follow Indian channels today, they're all talking about that this is really a gang-related activity which is taking place in Canada. All these killings, harassments, extortion, and it's really actually Canada's fault that it has allowed through its liberal immigration policies to allow these people to come to Canada who are actually carrying on these activities. It has nothing to do with us. So, so that's a kind of narrative which has been going on. And India is also getting very tough, saying without any particular kind of evidence, we are actually going to take retaliatory actions. So it's, we don't know where we're going to go from there. As I mentioned before, it's really the trust has broken. And there is absolutely no kind of, the parties are not talking to each other at the same level.
You have laid it out so well when it comes to what we're hearing from, as you say, the different narratives. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you, Michelle.
Rita Tremblay is Professor Emerita in Political Science from the University of Victoria. It is just about 12:23 now. This is BC Today. And coming up after 12:30, we are taking your calls to Sonia Furstenau. And so we are having some trouble with our phone lines right now, but we're hoping to fix them imminently so that they'll be ready for 12:30. It's now 12:23, BC Today. Well, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh addressed the RCMP allegations against the Indian government agents in Canada this morning.
The RCMP allegations that were shared, the information that was shared yesterday, are deeply, deeply disturbing. The RCMP basically painted a picture that a foreign government is engaging criminal elements in Canada to perpetrate violence against Canadians, including shooting at homes, shooting at Canadians' homes, killing Canadians, shooting at Canadian businesses, shooting at Canadian communities. We saw in the past year an uptake, a serious increase in gun violence. And the RCMP is pointing to the fact that a portion of that, a significant portion, can be attributed to a foreign government hiring criminal elements. This is a threat to anyone that lives in those communities. Anyone that has family in those communities, kids playing in the parks where those homes were shot at or those businesses were shot at. This is serious. I love our country. I love our democracy. I would do anything to protect it. I can't imagine or understand any political leader who wouldn't also do anything to protect our country. And that's why it troubles me deeply that Pierre Poilievre is unwilling to receive security clearance and to fully understand what's going on. I don't want the Indian government, which is who the RCMP has implicated in this, and the Modi government specifically, I don't want the Indian government or Modi to think they've got someone in Canada who's willing to look the other way to ignore what's going on. We need to take an approach where we're all on the same side, that we're all denouncing this serious series of allegations, and that we're standing united to do everything possible to protect Canadians.
Saturday is a provincial election, and this morning, BC Conservative leader John Rustad released his party's full election platform. It includes the much-anticipated budget his party is putting forward. Rustad says there will be $2.3 billion in additional spending over the next 2 years, plus the additional tax relief they're implementing on top of that. And John Rustad took questions from reporters, and here's some of that.
There's so much that's going on that needs to be looked at and repaired in British Columbia. So I guess just in closing, I would say this. The strategic investments that we are going to make, both the capital investments as well as the operating investments, are specifically designed to address these many problems that David Eby has created in British Columbia. The tax relief that we're putting in place is to help with affordability. The plan we have put in place around housing will create stability and create rental units and help to stabilize that market and bring some of those costs down for people. And the most important thing, to get our economy going so that we aren't burdening the future with additional credit card debt like the NDP are doing, but that we have that sound fiscal management that's needed to get us back to a balanced budget within 2 years and to make sure that our economy can meet the needs of people in this province. So I'm very pleased to present to you the platform that we have, and I'm very pleased to say that under a Conservative government, common sense change will be the approach that we take in British Columbia. Enough of a province that's run by ideology, that's run by the NDP. We need to get back to a province that is going to be sound fiscal management, but most importantly, that's going to put people first. Make sure that we put patients first, make sure that we put youth first, make sure that this province is a place that people can once again be proud to be called British Columbians. Thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you. We're going to start with Andrea McPherson with Global. One question, one follow-up.
Good morning. Despite the ongoing controversy from his social media posts, will you include Brent Chapman in your caucus if he is elected in South Surrey?
Thank you for raising that question. I look at the issues really that have been brought forward and the actions that are being taken. The actions that I just laid out, for example, by David Eby and what he has done in British Columbia. The actions that have created the drug crisis that we have today, that have created the lawlessness that we're seeing on our streets. Those are the actions that speak much louder than words. Mr. Chapman has come out with clarification in terms of his statements. He has also put in place a lawyer, so it'd be inappropriate for me to comment further. But I tell you something, it's up to the people in British Columbia to make a decision, both whether they elect Brent Chapman to represent Surrey South, but also whether they want to elect an NDP government that has brought such devastation over 7 years, or whether they want to elect a Conservative government that's going to bring hope and optimism for people in British Columbia.
Further to that, if your party forms government, would Chapman get a cabinet post?
So I'm not going to speculate one way or the other in terms of people who might go in the cabinet. I can tell you that we will certainly be looking at all the options that we have should we have that honour of forming government. We have many great candidates across this province, many great people, like so many of the candidates that are here today, that are fighting hard on a day-to-day basis for people in this province, for their riding, to make sure they're well represented. We're going to make sure, should we have that honour of forming government, that we have a cabinet that comes forward that is reflective of all the people in British Columbia from across this province, and that draws on the great skill sets we have from so many of our good candidates.
Yvette with the CBC.
Sorry about that. Oh, sorry. I'm Ashley with the Canadian Press. I'm sorry, I accidentally cut in front of her. You just said that you're going to balance the budget in 2 years.
No, two terms, sorry. Two terms,
Sorry,
my sorry.
What is the hard number for how much your platform will cost? I haven't heard a hard round number.
So, like I say, the platform, when you look at the NDP's budget that they brought forward in March of 2024, which of course they have blown within 3 months. They've actually added another $1 billion in budget to that. But when you look at that, we will be adding over the next 2 years $2.3 billion in additional spending, plus the additional tax relief that we're looking at putting on top of that. Overall, though, by getting our economy going, by increasing what I'm expecting to do, that is what is going to level that out and bring down our deficit over the 2 terms.
That is BC Conservative leader John Rustad taking questions from reporters as he released the party's platform this morning. It's just about 12:30 now. You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks so much for joining us. And ahead of the election this Saturday, we are taking your questions to BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau, and that comes your way right after this CBC News Update with Susan McNamee. This is BC Today. My apologies, we've been having some technical difficulties. But right now, let's pause for a CBC News update. And here is Susan McNamee.
Good afternoon. In the news, as you've been hearing, John Rustad and the BC Conservatives are releasing their platform today. It includes $2.3 billion in additional spending over 2 years. That would bring the current...
We're having to pause our newscast at the moment as those technical difficulties continue. Our apologies for that. We're trying to get things going right now. I think let's just go to the show. I'm sorry about this. Just going to go to the show now, okay?
Michelle, hi there. It's Gloria Makarenko inviting you to join us for On the Coast this afternoon. You know, the California garage punk and surf rockers Shannon and the Clams, they're set to play in Vancouver tonight. But first, they're going to drop by our studio to talk about their new album. It's called The Moon is in the Wrong Place. And of course, we're going to continue our journey around Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley, visiting every single riding to hear what is top of mind for voters. So join us for On the Coast between 3 and 6.
BC Today here on CBC, and we are having some technical difficulties at the moment with our phone lines, but we are trying to get that fixed for you right now. And what we're hoping to do is be able to connect with the leader of the BC Green Party, Sonia Furstenau, standing by to take your questions ahead of the BC election this Saturday, of course, October 19th. And do make sure to stay tuned to CBC and all our platforms. We'll have results coming in for you all through that evening. We have just wrapped up our interview regarding the announcement from the RCMP yesterday, making serious allegations against alleging that agents of the Indian government have been involved in cases of extortion and intimidation and even murders in Canada. And we spoke with a professor in our last half hour. Thanks so much for all of your emails. We'll go through them, bctoday@cbc.ca, and we'll put them together for you. But we are awaiting our connection with Sonia Furstenau, the leader of the BC Greens. I think we'll. Yeah, I know. There's no other. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I think that we'll just. BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau on the line. Our numbers, if you want to call in and ask a question of the leader of the BC Green Party, our number is 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. We're taking your emails as well, bctoday@cbc.ca. Sonia Furstenau, thank you very much for your patience and welcome to the program.
Well, thanks so much, Michelle.
Let me start as we await calls and emails coming in. This election, it's been a tight race between the NDP and the Conservatives. Why do you believe voters should consider the Green Party?
Yeah, it's looking like a very tight race, much like 2017, in which case the BC Greens can play the role of a balance of responsibility in the House. And I think what we've seen from these two parties is a lack of vision, a lack of coherence, a lack of staying true to their values and their principles. And what we could have is a minority government on the other side of this election where BC Greens can play a role of really putting forward serious and people-focused policy, which is what is the foundation of what we've done in the last 7 years in the legislature.
Let's take a call from Chris in Victoria. Hi, Chris. Go ahead to Sonia Furstenau. Hi there, Chris. Okay, we are still connecting with Chris in Victoria. Our numbers again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. I do have an email question here for you from Joan, who writes, why don't you work more closely with the NDP? You seem to have more in common with them than not. It seems to be a power struggle. If you're serious about working for the people, I believe you would. All the Greens are going to do is maybe weaken the number of votes the NDP would get. Like you say, the Greens won't win, but by not working together, you're giving more of a chance for the Conservatives. I'm voting NDP because why stop something that has a lot working for it? So the question from Joan is, why not work more closely with the NDP?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things the NDP and the Conservatives actually agree on. That's expanding fracking, subsidizing fossil fuels, no plans to rein in the role of investment companies in our housing crisis. They agree on involuntary care. They agree on not bringing mental health under MSP. And they agree on not raising rates for disability and social assistance. And so the BC Greens actually have a lot of positions that are very different from both the NDP and the Conservatives. And I think what we've demonstrated is that we do work. We worked with the NDP in 2017 to form the Confidence and Supply Agreement. And we worked very well on behalf of the people of BC. We got a lot done in those 3 years of the minority government. And what I would say is it's a very different situation when the NDP were in the minority than when they were in the majority. And they abandoned a lot of their principles, as we've seen in this election. They're abandoning carbon tax. They won't go so far as to bring in vacancy control to restrict how much rents are raised between tenancies. There's a lot that the NDP don't agree with us on, and we are really standing up for principles and policies that would improve things in BC, and most importantly, focus on the well-being of people, the well-being of our communities, and the well-being of the environment.
Sheena is our next caller now from Victoria. Hi, Sheena.
Hi.
Yes, go ahead, please,
Sonia.
to Sonia Furstenau.
Hi.
Yes. Hello. I read all the party platforms. I'm really impressed by the Green platform. I noticed that the NDP have said that we cannot have, you just mentioned it, vacancy control. I did speak with David Eby, and he said the reason was developers won't build unless they're allowed to continue with the same old, where they can raise prices between tenants to whatever they want, which is why we have such crazy high rents. That just doesn't sound real to me, to say we have to endure what we've been enduring. So would you please explain the vacancy control so that I would understand it better?
Yeah, well, I'll just start. Here in Victoria, rents have gone for a one-bedroom in 2017. Rent was less than $1,000 a month, and now it's over $2,100 a month for average rent. And that's what we've seen. Without vacancy control, rents have more than doubled in 7 years. And one of the problems we have is the role that these investment companies, these real estate investment trusts are playing. They're buying up enormous amounts of real estate in BC. A lot of rental properties are being bought by them. And then their incentive is to evict people because it's when they have a vacancy that there's no control over how much they can raise the rent. And so it can go up 20, 30, 40%. And until that vacancy control is there, the incentive for these big companies to evict people remains. And I think what we need to see is the moment we're in is a real crisis. A lot of people are at risk of losing their housing. We've lost an enormous amount of affordable housing in the last 10 years. And there's 100,000 units of affordable housing right now that are at risk of being lost unless we take measures to protect it. So what I would say right now is, as an interim measure, we need vacancy control until we get enough non-market housing to ensure that everybody in our province has a place to live and can afford housing. It's a real crisis right now.
And how would you convince, just going to Sheena's question, how would you implement vacancy controls, and how would there be a challenge working with developers on that?
Well, what we've seen in jurisdictions where they have had vacancy control is that it hasn't resulted in less building and less development. And the reality is the developers themselves are saying, look, it's not our job to create affordable housing. And this is one of the arguments that we were making in the House last fall, which is we can't rely on the for-profit market housing sector to build affordable housing. It's not in their mandate. What we don't have enough of is non-market, truly affordable housing. And we lost those investments when the federal government stopped investing. And we need the federal government, but also our plan, $1.5 billion a year, to build 26,000 non-market housing units a year. We really need to make sure that we get enough of that non-market available to people so it puts a check and a balance on the market housing.
Sheena, thank you very much for the question. James is our next caller now from Spence's Bridge. Hi, James.
Hello. I just wanted to say the Green Party has lost a great opportunity, particularly at the debate, to talk about upgrading democracy in BC. The Green Party has a constitutional value of participatory democracy. It has been tweaked in BC. It does not follow the international standard or the standard of other Canadian provinces now. It is less democratic. However, if the Green Party would have offered a policy to the people to legalize real democracy, or to have a referendum to legalize your right to introduce and vote on government bills, they would have walked away with this election. Upgrading democracy is what people want. This is how we get a better healthcare system. This is how we get control over resources again. This is how we get better government revenues, less corruption, etc. And I wish the Green Party would talk about participatory democracy. Democracy defined by the Greeks in 550 BC is literally rule by the people. To rule by the people, they must have the legalized right to introduce and vote on government bills.
James, thank you very much. Go ahead, Sonia.
Oh, thanks for that, James. And I agree that we should all be focused on how do we strengthen our democracy. We have a representative democracy in BC, which means we elect representatives. That's what we're doing on Saturday. But the Greens, we do have a lot on democracy in our platform, including a standing citizens assembly where we could have the citizens assembly really participating in policy making on specific issues. We have a piece on electoral reform. And we have specific ideas around how to make the legislature work better, including the idea of regional caucuses that work across party lines based on their regions, so that MLAs are actually working with each other to best represent the regions that they've been elected to represent. So I agree, James, that there's lots of things we can do to strengthen our democracy. We have a whole section in our platform on democratic reform that I'm really proud and really excited by.
James, thank you. We do have Chris on the line now from Victoria. Hi, Chris. Thanks so much.
No problem. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can now. Go ahead.
Good. Hi, Sonia. Thanks very much for taking my call. And first of all, I guess I'll just frame my questions around the fact that I am a Green supporter. I vote Green when it comes to provincial and federal elections, and I appreciate you and your perspective on politics. With that said, as a Green supporter, I'm sometimes disheartened with the lack of legitimacy that the Green Party seems to have in comparison to the other parties running for government in the province. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that there are over 40 ridings in British Columbia where Greens don't even have a candidate. And also during the debate in your closing statements, there is an obvious recognition that you don't really have any expectations of winning this election. What you're hoping for is enough Greens will be voted for so that neither of these other parties become a majority government. And while I think it's commendable that you recognize where you stand, what I would really like to see is a provincial government in the future that's run by the Green Party. So my question for you is, why has it been so hard for the Green Party to become a legitimate contender with the other political parties in BC? And what needs to happen for the Green Party to gain enough support and legitimacy so that they can be a real viable alternative to the Conservatives and NDP in BC?
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. I mean, of course, this is a question that's top of mind for us always. And one of the challenges of breaking into a two-party system is breaking into all of the structures around that two-party system. And we see, in terms of media attention, in terms of how much space we get in the House, it's challenging. And if you take the last election, we had 16% of the vote, but we only had 2% of the seats in the House. And with those 2 seats that we had, we actually demonstrated that even a couple of Greens makes a huge difference. We bring issues that the other parties won't talk about, subsidizing oil and gas, protecting old growth, vacancy control, as we were just talking about, stopping the use of NDAs, MSP covering mental health care for people in BC. There's a lot of initiatives we bring forward that the other parties don't and won't talk about. And we get it on the political agenda. I would love to be in a position right now to be saying you could have a Green government after this election. But Greens also are very rooted in reality and evidence. But we could have a Green balance of power. And I think that would be very good for British Columbia. There are 25 seats where we don't have candidates running, and we want to definitely improve on that next time. But I think what we've shown and what Greens around the world actually show is that even a couple of Greens elected to a parliament or a legislature makes a really big difference, because we do, in fact, do politics very differently. We work across party lines, across jurisdictions. We're very solution-focused. We're very focused on evidence and reality and science. And that sets us apart from the other political parties in this province and generally. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to do with such a small number of Greens, and really hoping in the ridings where we can win on Vancouver Island and West Van, Sea to Sky and the Kootenays, we can bring back 4 to 6 Greens and really have a significant impact and set ourselves up to be running to be government in the next election.
Chris, thank you for the question. Let's head up to Prince Rupert, and Wendy is calling now. Hi, Wendy.
Hello there. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, Wendy.
First of all, thank you very much for your excellent comments on the debate last week. I thought you were the only one that sort of was on topic and knew it was going on. My question for us in Prince Rupert and in the North in general is we don't have a Green candidate. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty disappointing because our voices aren't heard. We're in the area where all these pipelines and LNG developments are coming through thanks to the NDP. And it's just disappointing that we don't seem to be able to do anything about it. Is there any such thing like platooning in a candidate, or, how can I support the Greens but not have a vote?
Yeah, and Wendy, it breaks my heart that we didn't get candidates in all of the ridings. We had a lot lined up, and just, the size, we struggled to get over the line, and it's something that I'm really committed to for the next election. But one thing you can do, Wendy, is you can help with making phone calls for candidates in ridings where we do. In Bulkley Valley, Stikine, Will Marsden is running. He's a hereditary chief, and we're very excited about him. He's taken a very principled stand against expansion of pipelines in the Northwest. And so reaching out to the ridings where we do have candidates and helping out is one way to help have your voice heard. And I really hear you, Wendy, and I'm so sorry that we don't have someone on the ballot for you this time.
Wendy, thank you for the call. I have an email here from Rich, and his question is in regards to organized crime. Rich writes, I think many of society's problems these days stem from these elements. What do you and your party propose to do about organized crime?
Yeah, I'm really concerned about organized crime as well. And I look back to when the NDP first got elected, and there was a lot of investigation into ways that money laundering was happening in BC, into the Vancouver model of real estate being used to launder money, connected to drug trafficking. And I think that, we have a long ways to go still in really examining how much organized crime and corruption is playing a part in a lot of the problems we're seeing, not just in the illicit drug supply, but in our real estate market. And one thing we can do with that is a lot more transparency. So if we make the corporate registry searchable, for example, and other countries like the UK have done this in response to getting on top of numbered companies being able to hide criminal activity behind them, that's one way that governments can really start to root out illegal activity that's happening in plain sight in a lot of times. And so I've been calling for that, making the corporate registry searchable.
Okay.
And also addressing the social issues that we see.
Let me jump in with one last email question here. I just have about a minute left, but Scott writes, if you say you follow the science, why are you ignoring emerging science on the ongoing pandemic as it relates to COVID-19 and the long-term damage to our population and economy?
Oh yeah, I've been very vocal for the last 4 years about my concerns around long COVID and the science around COVID, and really made a lot of calls for government to be really open and transparent. Asked the minister to respond to why COVID being airborne was not something that was being told to the public. I think with all of these emerging diseases and vectors that we're seeing because of climate change, we need a lot of transparency, a lot of education, and public health needs to take a really proactive role in ensuring that people are well informed and staying healthy. That's the key piece.
Sonia Furstenau, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate your patience here with our technical difficulties.
Thanks, Michelle. Always a pleasure.
You take care. Have a good day. Bye. That is Sonia Furstenau, leader of the BC Green Party. Tomorrow, we'll have NDP leader David Eby to join us taking your calls. We have a request in for BC Conservative leader John Rustad.